Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by MMA Renaissance man Jason Chambers. Jason, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. Jason, I want to talk about what you've got going on in your career. I also want to talk about some popular MMA topics that are happening right now, but first I want to talk about ONE FC. As somebody who's been in this sport for a long time, as a fighter, a manager, a commentator, a guy who's worked in the front office, why has ONE FC been able to do so many great things in such a short time? What makes ONE FC so good?
Well, they have a lot of money. That always is a good starting place, right? There's a lot of these companies, they're not funded enough, or they don't spend their money wisely. But, jokes aside, they brought the right people together, and their mindset, I think, is different, which is really kind of helps them etch out the Asian marketplace. I mean, there's really just there's a myriad of things. I mean, first of all, there's nobody in that Asian space where martial arts is kind of born and raised that has been putting on any type of sort of MMA events on this level. So there's a completely new territory in Singapore and Thailand and China and everything like that. So that's part of it. The other part of it is Victor Queen did a really good job using his relationships with both ESPN and the X Games he brought as a property over there. So he's had the experience kind of working new territory in these marketplaces in the extreme sports area. And, bringing guys like Matt Hume on board from the get-go and, Tatsu Tong and the guys that have the right gyms. And Victor's mindset, I think, has been pretty smart. He's been able to partner up with people as opposed to try to, separate each other. A lot of organizations and willingness to, they want to separate their organization from another one, and they don't want to compete. But Victor's doing a really good job of figuring out ways that they can build mixed martial arts in that space cohesively. And then by doing that with the champions, a lot of the top opponents, and been able to, put up a really good show and the production value they did, and all the dreams folding too, helps with bringing over some of the guys that they up to and stuff.
The new markets that ONE FC's been going into, the Singapores, the Indonesias, the Philippines, the Malaysias, going all across Asia. How's the fan base? Do the fans understand what's going on, or is it like 1993 here where nobody has a clue, or is it, around the Ultimate Fighter where people were starting to kind of get an idea of where MMA is at? What's the fan base like?
It's surprisingly well educated.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things that I was the most shocked at is when I first did my first ONE FC with the group, was actually their second event, and these shows, when they run on that big of a level, from the production side to just you've got 30 fighters fighting, plus tournament, you have 180 flights, you got rooms, you got TV production, everything has to fire off. I was actually really impressed with the way that they were keeping everybody in the production side kind of on point. I mean, when you got in town, you get a production schedule. It was run very, very efficiently, even down to some of the smaller details like their signage and the shuttle to hotels. I mean, I've done a billion shows where you wait at the airport 2 hours, and you're going to expect tickets. So seeing the first show be done so efficiently and so well, I thought was a testament that these guys already have a big jumpstart with head of the gears, grinding the right way. So, but the thing about the question. I'm actually shocked at the turnout they've had, and I attribute a lot of that to just the marketing that Victor's done in the local areas. And when I was in Singapore, and you look at some of the sponsors that ONE FC has managed to get on for even a second show. I mean, Energizer, Gillette, Carl's Jr. These are some sponsors in the markets that are Estonian investors in MMA, and I think that utilizing their marketing ability, and for instance, Carl's Jr., which is a big chain in the States. You go to Carl's Jr. in Singapore before the event, and they were on. They ONE FC was on their bag. That's huge. The UFC and Burger King just got in bed a few years ago, and I think they're much more receptive to it over there. So that's been great, and the fans have been fantastic. I mean, the last event we just did, I think 12,000 people in the seats. I mean, it's incredible for an event just getting started.
Mm-hmm. With all these big companies that have come in and start sponsoring ONE FC events, do you think it has a lot to do with they just get martial arts, they understand that, and now martial arts has become popular again because of the rise of mixed martial arts? Do you think that's a main reason why?
Yeah, I think it's coupled. I mean, it would be naive to think that it's strictly based on look, everyone knows it's the fastest growing sport. There's a bunch of statistics to back that up, but you'd have to be living under a rock to not see how big martial arts has gotten. If you look back at, like you mentioned, 1994, people were clamoring for that one random, Ring of Combat VHS at Blockbuster that had this crazy fighting stuff on it where anything goes. And now, you're 15, 20 years down the road, and it's like this evolution has just come in leaps and bounds. I mean, it's, mixed martial arts is kind of like Apple, just when you come out with something great, it suddenly has this whole transformation and just keeps shifting and evolving, and it just gets better exponentially because these guys are getting so much better and more athletic. And so, the sponsor, I think, that came on board were partially because Victor's worked with some of them in the past, and with the other properties that he did with the X Games he brought to Asia. And I think another part of it is just them seeing that, this is this big sport, and Asia is a huge territory that hasn't been explored. I think that, when martial arts started there, you'd be idiotic not to think that at some point it was going to go there and it's going to blossom there. I mean, that's such an integral part of the culture in so many areas there.
I saw a press release from your management company, Apex Sports Agency, and it was talking about how ONE FC and Apex have come together. For some people who haven't maybe seen that press release or have heard about this partnership, what are exactly the details of this partnership?
Well, there's companies here in the U.S. that want to be involved with ONE FC, and we handle all of their United States sponsorships, brand integration, things like that. And they have some stuff in the pipe, too, that we're working on putting together that I can't get into, but next year should be just tremendous based on the exposure they're going to get. ONE FC just started to get their exposure in the U.S. If you look on, like, In Demand, if you have DirecTV or whatnot, you can get some of the shows on demand and stuff like that. So those are deals that help put together. And there's some other stuff coming down the pipe with some local sponsors as far as the U.S. marketplace wanting to kind of get into Asia. Because, I mean, by every metric meter, ONE FC is available to 500 million people. I mean, if, 1% of 1%, that's just an astronomical amount of reach that you get. So there's a big base there that's not only untapped, but it's hungry for that content. Everyone here, I'm a huge UFC fan. I mean, that'll never change, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But a lot of the fans that watch the UFC, we've seen the tap outs and we've seen this clothing company and this and that. So we're just constantly inundated by all this. This is what you buy if you're a fan of stuff. And the people in Asia, they're really nice to know before that. They're looking at these products going, wow, that's crazy. I want to buy that thing, or I want to train there. I want to do that thing. So they're really hungry for it. And I think a lot of companies kind of recognize that, getting in being first to market is a great way to, to really monetize and take a good return on investment over there.
With this partnership you guys have formed, is it possible that we could see some of your clients fight on ONE FC cards, or is that too much of a conflict of interest because you're doing the commentary thing?
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, I don't handle. I knew going in that there would be a conflict of interest if I started overstepping on the commentary to sign my guys. So there's Nate Bay, who's one of their agents that works for my company, and he deals with the international guys. So I let him constantly badger Matt Hume about getting some guys and pushing guys over there. But the ONE FC's model right now, and I think it's smart, is that they're keeping the primary. I'd say 85% of the talent that they're signing is regionally based, because they're not trying to compete with the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe inadvertently they will, but they're trying to. I mean, they're playing ball on the other side of the world with a completely different clientele, with a completely different TV deal, different way that they're monetizing their investments. So they're trying to go into these different marketplaces, and they're grabbing the best talent from those marketplaces, the Ole Larsons, the Hanario Benarios and stuff. With not only are those people going to put butts in the seat, whereas any of my guys, I mean, truthfully, unless you're a big name UFC vet like James Oliver or something, or a former world champ like an Arlovsky or Silva, you're not putting a lot of butts in the seat, no matter how good you are. So, do I want to get some of my guys in ONE FC? Of course, but it has to make sense for us, and it has to make sense for ONE FC.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about ONE FC 6, which is coming up on October 6th. The major thing is the 3 title fights that are going to be on that card, but the new rules, the open attack rule is now gone. Are you glad to see that rule being eliminated?
Oh man, I'm so happy. That was the most, that really is a closest. I think that it was, in theory, it was great, because, the thought process behind it was, hey, you want to make sure if the guy gets knocked down from a crazy punch or a kick, that he's cognizant enough to defend himself before you can attack with these different elements, because you don't want to get anyone get hurt. And fighter safety is a priority. It's so hard to implement, and I actually saw this in the earlier events, UFC, Yeah, it's been really hard because there's that instinctual lack of momentum. And you're in the middle of a fight. You're going at it, and you got to pause to think about looking at the ref. I mean, you're not going to do that. You're going, I can kick him in the head, I can kick him in the head. So that I think was tremendously problematic. And I think that it was just awesome and a great testament to Matt and to Victor, to listening to the fans. I mean, the fans on all the forums are like, that rule sucks. You got to get rid of the rule. And the next day they were like, that rule's done. We're getting rid of it. And I think it's going to be great because it'll open up a lot more aggression too. I think some of the fighters actually talked to you were a little concerned about how do we do this. They don't want to get fined, qualified, for a fight you're winning because you didn't wait for open at that time. So I'm glad that rule fit the third.
Yeah, the one thing about that rule that I always wondered about is how you're supposed to, for the referee, look at your opponent. Guys have trouble even listening to their corner. It didn't really make sense to me, that rule.
Sure. Yeah. It's hard because you're kind of asking a fighter to it's definitely a difficult rule to follow. I think that's why they did away with it, though. Mm-hmm. So we'll see where the chips fall after the cards fall after this next week.
Mm-hmm. ONE FC6, you mentioned coming up next week, 3 title fights. What's the one that you've got your eye on? What's the one that you're looking most forward to?
Man, that's a tough one. I would probably say the 55-pound scratch.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a fan of Zorro, but is a nice guy and just a gentleman outside the cage. But he was a beast. He looks really good against Huerta too. And Roger's been through his ups and downs, but you can't take away the fact that Roger's a very seasoned guy, very experienced. And the thought process behind that fight was I thought that Roger would keep on his feet and may pick up Zorro, because Zorro's only loss came from getting KO'd from a big overhand right, I think it was. And he looked just spectacular. He used his reach well. I mean, they put together a good game plan. He beat him on the feet and then just was able to take it to him. So, that was really impressive. I think Zorro's going to be, in 2-3 years, he's going to be a guy that everybody wants that crossover fight with a bigger promotion or, bringing guys into fight. Because he's a huge guy for 55, too. I mean, guys like Josh Thompson look small.
He looked big at 170, and that's not even the weight class that he fights in. He's a 55-pounder, so...
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he's got reach. I have no idea how he makes 55. That guy, it's bananas.
Yeah. Now, the main event for that card is going to be a lightweight super fight between Aoki and LaPont. Now, I know you can't give away your pick because you're going to be commentating the show, but give us their keys to victory.
Well, I think that the game plan to beat Aoki has kind of been put out there already by guys like Gilbert Melendez and,
Eddie Alvarez.
Eddie Alvarez, mm-hmm. Yeah, Eddie didn't tell me that was his name. So I think that the plan is, to beat Aoki is you just got to use your boxing, you got to be aggressive, take the shots, and just stay outside of that clinch game. When he gets inside the guard there, and, a lot of people don't respect guard. That's the guys like Hansen and Jay-Z and a lot of these guys that fought Aoki. He's dangerous. When you take away, and that's what Eddie Bravo for years too. So the rubber guard is a very, very good offensive tool if you have to get your back. But when you take away the shin pads and the leg wraps that he used to wear overseas, it creates a different dynamic because of the sweat. But it's easy to train with guys. A lot of guys didn't give a shit. They just went right into Aoki's guard. This can't be that tough. I train with black belts all the time. I'm going to be the guy that thwarts his guard. And the next thing you know, he's always throwing up attacks. You're constantly in danger. So obviously, the pot needs to keep that standing. And use his reach, use his distance, and just keep battering Aoki and just beat him up for 3 rounds. I wouldn't get in any crazy exchanges where Aoki's going to be able to clinch and take him down. Mm-hmm. And, to go to the guy, everyone knows this is a very, very, very difficult situation for the pot to get out.
In this fight, do you possibly see Aoki doing what he did against Shaolin, where he pushed the pace and attacked with striking? Do you possibly see that happening?
It's tough to say. I could see Aoki pushing the pace, but look, at the end of the day, Aoki's always going to be the guy that submits you from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
He's not throwing any crazy spinning back kicks, knocking guys out. He has some really solid judo. He's got some slick jiu-jitsu, but he's going to, in my opinion, he's going to go back to what he knows. So he may press the pace, but if he does, I think pressing the pace would actually be wise, because he knows that the Pop's don't want to keep it standing, so if he takes him off his game and presses it, he might be able to force a clinch and maybe to the ground faster. But, it's really, this is that typical grappler versus striker match, and then I hate to throw that accolade on it because everyone everyone's cross-trains nowadays, but primarily we're looking at a grappler versus a striker.
Right. Are there any other fights on this card that you're looking forward to?
Man, there's a bunch. I'm really actually excited to see all the title fights, because that was one of those things that I was always questioning, is there was never a lot of talk of how do we etch out who the contenders are. I think it kind of just became a natural process that just kind of evolved through guys winning and guys losing. So the title bouts are the ones that I'm most excited about. And Mitch Chelsea's about. Mitch is always fun to watch. He'll be another good one to see banging out. And then win or lose, man, I'm such a fan of Jens. He's such a nice guy, and I'm always rooting for that guy. So I hope Jens pulls away with the win. One of the things that ONE FC is doing too is that they're having super fights. They're going to have their belt holders in each division, and they're also going to have Grand Prix champs. Which is kind of an idea that Pride toyed with them for a while. They had the Grand Prix champion versus the heavyweight champion, which is cool because it creates different matchups, and it kind of helps there be some lateral movement, but not through the next guy to get that down by this guy. So yeah, that's interesting to see how the tournament plays out and the belt.
Jason, I want to change gears a little bit and now talk about you and what you've got going on in your career. Your management company, Apex Sports Agency. How long have you guys been in business?
We actually just had our 1 year anniversary last month. It was probably the first couple of months was really just the 1 year anniversary was from the formulation of the LLC, not necessarily from execution of any strategy. But we just had our 1 year anniversary, so a year and a couple of weeks.
Is there anything that you haven't done in this industry? You've been a fighter, you've been a front office guy, you've been a commentator, manager. Anything you haven't done?
Gosh, you know what? I'm sure that there's I don't know. I mean, working on it. I think this is going to be the end of it. People always ask if, I ever want to fight again, and that always immediately comes up, and they think everybody that's ever been competitive athletic wants to, but there's zero chance I'll ever fight again. So I think that this makes the most sense, just because I've been blessed with being able to be around this sport more when I've been at a JKD school, and I went to a Henzo Gracie seminar in 1994 and met Henzo and Pat Miletich and just fought and got over the Masters, and then this is before anybody, 5 years before anybody even knew who Matt Hughes was. Matt and Mark were coming into the gym, so I got to get my butt kicked by a lot of guys that I watched grow up and go, wow, this guy's the UFC champion for years, and all these guys and now that I just have a torn and decided that there's no way in heck I could ever be competitive again on a bigger level, I think this is the best use of my network of people that I know, and also my wealth of experience in the sport too.
Do you think that gives you a leg up on the competition that you've done, basically everything in this sport, as opposed to another guy who maybe, he's just a good businessman and maybe doesn't really know much about MMA, maybe he was managing, some guys in other sports? Do you think that, you being so well-versed in this sport gives you an advantage?
Well, I think that, having an advantage is really just about how you execute it, because there's a lot of people that have a background here or there, and they just can't really leverage it to mean anything for anyone, right? So, there's guys that could say, hey, this guy went to Harvard, and, shouldn't he be a better manager, but I think that it helps me see the sport from a multitude of sides that you brought up. I mean, having been a fighter, I can empathize with not only the struggles, but also the massive sacrifices and the ambitions that these guys go through. So that my heart goes out to them, and I really feel for that. And also knowing what I wanted when I was coming up as working with the management group, and then having lived with the fun side of the shows and knowing that what kind of a headache it can be for promoters. I think at the end of the day, all the experience really should boil down to one thing: is does it benefit my clients? And I think that it will, and I think that it has. I think the club has been lucky so far with putting together a pretty nice roster, for several months. So, give me 3 or 4 years, we'll have a real solid plan together.
Mm-hmm. How do you manage all your time? You're doing the management thing, you're doing the commentary thing, you got a family. How do you manage all your time?
It's tough. It's very challenging. From the business side, and before we decided to go into managing, and people ask me for years, friends and stuff like that too, to manage them, or hey, can you help me out with this, or can you look at this contract and stuff? And there's managers out there that have real estate backgrounds and stuff, and that's where their business, or the practical knowledge comes from. And I have a broker's license, but I don't put it on websites because it doesn't make any sense for MMA. Who cares about a broker's license? But that doesn't correlate to anything mixed martial arts or management. Right. But before what's my SWOT analysis? What are my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Who against, and I wanted to look at it like a business, because a lot of people in this sport right now, or I play this game and they're my managers. Like, they really don't innately see a lot of value in it, and that's partially because there for a long time weren't a lot of managers in this business, because they weren't able to bring a lot of value. They really didn't understand, being able to call up an agency like Gersh that has, Randy Couture, Gina Carano, Kung Lee and stuff, and different clients meetings over there, or how to, pitch to sponsor agencies and stuff. So I think it was just kind of a good mix of me talking to some of my friends and thinking, okay, what's the business got to look like in 5 years, and then how do I get there from day one? How do we set the business up so that we're different, but at the same time we're focused on what we're doing. And what I did was just kind of build a model that IMG and some of the big businesses in LA did. I mean, there's some great examples of huge agencies like the Berkshires, the CAAs, IMG that are doing this on a big level, have a great client base. So I just kind of went in and said, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? How do they, what's their protocol for dealing with situations? And I copied a lot of those business models and I put them into place into Apex Sports Agency. Mm-hmm.
How about your acting career? Do you have anything that you're working on now? Anything upcoming? Anything that we should be on the lookout for?
No is the short answer to that, is just because I left Los Angeles and I was in Florida, so there's not a big, acting is much in Los Angeles. But if you want to be a fisherman, you got to live near the water. If you really want to be an actor, you got to live in Los Angeles, with 97% of the work is there. So there's only one thing out here, and also, like you touched on, I mean, my time is just, it's so incredibly spent between my twins and the company, and making sure that I'm not only managing the company, but I'm more importantly, I'm leading and growing in the right way. And that's just, I'm lucky enough to have good staff, ambitious, and really like who we do too. So I wouldn't have the time if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. You said that you're done fighting. You moved on from that. But Spencer Pratt, would that be the guy that you would come back and fight if you were going to come back to fight in MMA?
Somebody has to fight that guy, right?
Right.
Look, at the end of the day, there's two reasons I decided I would stop fighting. One is it would be a conflict of interest for anyone I represented. Mm-hmm. For me to even have a quandary of, do I want to fight, or should this give your best effort to someone else, and you want to also be competitive with them on some level. It doesn't make sense. The second part was that, I decided that I didn't have the dedication, and I really respected the sport. And there's guys that I think fight way after they should have stopped fighting, and their dedication level just has shrunk through the floor. I had a contract with every damn organization out there. I had a contract with Pride, I had a contract with the Elite XC, and I had a contract with the UFC, and I never fought in any one of them. And I think that's God telling me, like, hey, you probably need to be involved in the sport in a different capacity. So, once I decided not to fight in the UFC, I had a contract to fight Spencer Fisher at UFC 60, and once I pulled out of that fight, he gave me a weapon, and I just realized that my passion really wasn't mixed martial arts, fighting. Like, I love the sport, but to sit there and to change your lifestyle consistently, to do all that, and it's such a crapshoot, and you give up so much. I mean, these guys are giving up, they're sacrificing family, friends, this diet, their lifestyle, to make a few grand, hopefully. So it's a sacrifice that I wasn't willing to make anymore, so I didn't want to stand in the way of anybody that was. Mm. But to circle back, I'd fight Spencer back.
Now, where did this all start? Because this has been a joke that's been on the internet for a while now. Is it just that fans have just, because you were doing the acting thing, and he was doing his thing on the hills, and they thought that'd be like a funny fight to put together because he was doing some training with, I think, Kevin Casey or something, or did you guys actually have some sort of beef, I guess you could say?
Well, it all started with him initially talking about being an MMA fighter and how badass he was, and that he was, accolades and stuff, and it was just kind of a joke. And then it circled back. I don't know how it got escalated so much, but it circled back to somebody made a comment that I made a comment too. I was talking about that wasn't, you're an MMA fighter, and he made some comments about you didn't clean my house or something like that. I was looking at him. He's like, do you want to go out there and talk about how badass you are? You want to put down fighters and stuff? And he basically, he's to me, it felt like all the guys that sacrificed their time and their dedication to you guys come along with the hand. It's tough stuff. So again, if that's what you're going to say and you want to talk a little shit to people that we have mutually friends with, you should be able to back it up. If not, that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. Jason, one thing I want to end on is popular topics in MMA, stuff that's going on right now. The first thing is a fighters union. Do you think we'll ever see one?
Yeah, I think the problem is that it would be very, very difficult to organize a fighters union because business, a lot of the smaller shows, if there were things like union raids and this and that were the collective bargaining side of it, I think that a fighters union would be massively beneficial. I think it could be beneficial to everyone involved, too, the UFC on down to the smaller promotions. But to get everyone on the same page would be very, very difficult because, like for every fighter that joins the UFC or joins the fighters union, there's going to be talented that's not going to want to do that because he's having an incentive to think it's a big deal. And those jobs are going to go to him. So I think that what even might make more sense, and I've talked about it to a few different guys, is creating some sort of a managers union or an agents union where there's ethical standards and stuff like that. And because obviously a union, right, is for collective bargaining. But it's the UFC is a private company. I mean, they're doing way more. At the end of love them or hate them, they're more for the sport than anybody else has outside of the Orient and Gracie. But it's hard to put a bunch of people together and try to rally for a union against a privately owned company that's they're not required to disclose any income statements and stuff. So I mean, this is a real touchy subject. This is what I've thought for a long time. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see a union. I think that guys fight for 7 years, and for whatever reason, they're making $100,000 a fight. I know guys that have made $500,000 in 4 years, and they have nothing now, and it's crazy. And I don't think that a union would necessarily solve that, but I think that a lot of the decisions that they make, like having a pension or having kind of a set way to, do things and think about the big picture is one of the things that a lot of guys don't do that a union could have.
Now, injuries in MMA, we've seen in the UFC and really all over. Basically, every show has been affected by injuries. But most of the attention has been on the UFC because they are the #1 organization. We've seen cards just completely wrecked because of these injuries. Why do you think we're seeing so many injuries now? And is there any possible way that injuries can be prevented in training?
Well, I don't think we're seeing more injuries. I think why it seems like we're seeing more injuries is because of the sheer number of shows that are on. You look at the UFC that used to do one pay-per-view every 2 or 3 or 4 months. There would be 5 or 6 events a year. And now they have their pay-per-views, the Ultimate Fighter, the FX, the Steel cards, the Facebook cards, the Fox cards. So there's just so much mixed martial arts on now that I think you look at a number and you compare it to individual event to event. I think we're probably thinking about the same number because it's not like this crazy injury bug has gone out and everyone's getting contagious and there's conventional injuries. I think there's 75% attributed to the fact that we're just seeing so many shows, so there's so many more people that are potential to be injured. The other 25% is putting out is black belt with really solid wrestling. You can't just be good at something. You have to be great everywhere. You can't be a great striker, a great wrestler, and a great jiu-jitsu guy to really excel at the sport. So the only other caveat is you have to be a great athlete. And I think you see a lot of guys. Like GSP, his wrestling went from okay to he's wrestling guys like Stitch, and he's taking guys down that have period accolades because he's a phenomenal athlete and just put the dedication into it. So eventually you're going to have guys too that have they're just overtraining and they're just working their butts off because they know that the athleticism part and they're pushing themselves harder and faster, and those injuries are going to happen. But I don't think there's any real way to prevent it. Just you just got to cross your fingers. I mean, right now I've got 2 or 3 guys. That Chris Clements just went under shoulder surgery yesterday. Clifford Starks, another one of my guys, has a meniscus tear. Chris Clements has Chris Grutzmacher just had knee surgery. So there's a bunch of injuries, but guys are training 7 days a week now. It's not like back in the day where you could train a couple times a week and get into a king of a cage or something and do well. It's a full-time gig.
Now, people all the time, they talk about oversaturation in MMA. Is there too much MMA or is there too much UFC?
Man, I'm an MMA crackhead. I don't think there can ever be too much MMA.
Right. I hear you.
You know, I mean, I think the only thing that the UFC has to, and by no means am I coming across, endeavoring to come across pop and tell the UFC how to run the business. They've done a great job of it, obviously. But, the only oversaturation thing they have to worry about is that, from the looks of it, their way they're monetizing their brand is through their pay-per-view revenue. And their pay-per-view, I think, eventually is going to suffer because I just don't see how you can put on so many shows and position yourself as this ultra-premium brand, and then you have to put some guys on this card, and then it's this card, and then it's this card. It's a little bit lower, and you're kind of getting your C cards to this network, and getting your Z cards to Fox, and the A cards to pay-per-view. It's difficult. I mean, I haven't not bought. I think I've missed 2 UFCs in the last 3 years that I haven't bought. But I mean, so I'm always going to buy them. I love watching them, but I'm addicted to that stuff. So, I don't know if they'll oversaturate. I think they just might have to think about at some point possibly rebranding, maybe getting away from the pay-per-view model and just doing the strictly, Fox Sports thing. I mean, look at football, right? I mean, how many football games are on over the course of the 4 months? I mean, they don't have the season. They're not oversaturated yet, so that's a different business model.
Now, a lot of fans have been critical about The Ultimate Fighter. Do you think the show has gotten stale? Do you think it's not as interesting as it once was?
I watched a handful of Ultimate Fighters. The first season, like everybody else, I was glued to my set. It was a crazy new thing. I think that to a large extent, it gets a little bit kind of antiquated. One of my guys, Sam Alvey, is on this season, and he's a great personality. And I think The Ultimate Fighter is a great platform to launch guys in their career. Competitive, but in most TV shows, even American Idol, it has a dip in the ratings. I mean, that's the biggest show in the world, right? So, any TV show, but you have to step back from the mindset and look at the developers and Viacom and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, the guys that run the network, this is just still television, it's still ratings for them. So, it's entertainment value. It's why am I watching, Spike as opposed to watching Fox? It's because this is more entertaining to me for whatever reason. And there's a formula that that perspective. Those do it, unfortunately, at some point run their course. I mean, there's countless summer shows that were 2 friends. They had to stop Seinfeld. So, I think that it does get a little bit redundant, but it also gives you a different viewpoint on, who the up-and-coming stars are, and you get to kind of get a little behind the scenes and some of the crazies in the sport. So.
Mm-hmm. And the final thing I want to touch on, and I appreciate you, taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy, and I thank you for being so generous with your time. The one thing I want to hit on last is a mega fight. What mega fight out there, George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva, John Jones, Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg. What mega fight do you think needs to be made?
Mitt Romney versus the 47%. I think that's... that's tough. I think that the one I would tune into first would be GSP Anderson Silva. If someone said you're going to die tomorrow, you got to pick one fight to watch, it would be GSP Anderson Silva. And I think that's just because it's been talked about for so long. But that's tough. I actually think that on paper, John Jones is a much more fan-friendly fight, and you both have kind of similar styles. And it would be really interesting to see how John deals with a guy that has good counter-punching, like Anderson does. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the trifecta. If they put together that card, that'll just blow everybody out. I mean, I'm not even too excited about Condit versus GSP. I like the fact that Condit's a stud and George is a stud too. But that fight doesn't do much for me. I'm going to watch it and get excited. But man, I think Anderson at some point is going to have to fight George. I think that'll probably be his last fight in the UFC. Win or lose, he's already solidified himself as a legend. So,
do any of these big fights that we were talking about earlier, do any of those fights elevate the sport to the next level, or are they just another fight that people want to see, people will be interested in, and possibly bring more eyeballs to the TV? Do you think they do anything big for the sport? Do you think it elevates it to another level?
I don't know if you can plan. I mean, I think what elevated the sport to the next level is what Dana did with Fox. It kind of solidified the sport as a legitimate sport by being on a mainstream network. And that's also one of the reasons I thought to go into the agency business was I felt that, the superstars are going to be able to make those bigger endorsement dollars once this trickle-down effect happens. Once you got onto Fox, it now becomes this unified mainstream areas, mainstream's eyes as an official sport. I mean, it's competing on the same network with baseball, football, basketball, that stuff. So not only is that going to garner the attention of other fighters and other stuff, it's also going to have the the Nike. Nike spends $330 million a year on endorsements and advertising, and that demographic is the most lucrative, 18 to 34 demographic. They could own that if they put $20 million a year into that with the UFC, as opposed to trying to compete, $40 million baseball deals with Gatorade. And I'd like to see the money come back into the sport. So I think that's really what is going to be the catapult to launching the UFC. I don't know. Will any fight be the do-all, end-all? I don't think so. I mean, I think that we're seeing the end of boxing kind of. Boxing is not going to have any more superstars. I'm not a huge fan of Pacquiao, Mayweather, and Chavez. I think the last fight that boxing's going to have is Pacquiao, Mayweather end up fighting. That would be the last kind of testosterone shot that's what's going to get. But the people have kind of evolved into this new sport now. So where it goes from here, who knows? Global domination, one country versus another country, I think is probably going to be the next big leap. But even that's kind of hard to say. Love to see the sport get to the Olympics. That'd be awesome. Right.
Now, Jason, last thing before I let you go, do you have a Twitter, Facebook, website? Where can fans, check out on what you're doing?
Well, the first and foremost thing is they can check out Carlo Prater's fighting the UFC October 5th, so that's right around the corner. And I got to get Carlo some love here. He's actually out here in Florida training in American Top Team. He's stoked for that fight. But we have the website, apexsportsagency.com, and our Twitter is apexsportsagency.com. You guys can reach everybody there, and myself, I'm on Twitter as well. Follow MMA. That's pretty easy to find.
Jason, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate it. Big